Have you ever wondered why some gardeners spray ordinary milk onto squash leaves instead of reaching for a fungicide? It sounds like another strange gardening myth, but there is actually a reason behind it. The surprising part is that milk is not the real secret. Timing is. If you've ever grown squash, zucchini, pumpkins, or cucumbers, you've probably experienced the same frustrating moment. Your plants are growing beautifully, producing huge green leaves that seem to double in size every week. Then one morning, you notice what looks like someone dusted the leaves with flour. At first, it's just a few tiny white spots. A few days later, those spots have spread across entire leaves. A week after that, your once healthy plants suddenly look tired, faded, and covered in a ghostly white coating. That white powder is called powdery mildew, and it is one of the most common diseases gardeners face when growing vine crops. The frustrating part is that by the time most people notice it, the fungus has already been spreading for days, sometimes even weeks. But the white powder is only the visible part of the problem. Powdery mildew is caused by several species of fungi that live on the surface of leaves. Instead of attacking roots or stems first, these fungi feed directly from the leaf tissue. As they spread, they reduce the plant's ability to photosynthesize efficiently. Less photosynthesis means less energy. Less energy means fewer flowers, fewer fruits, and plants that weaken much faster during the hottest part of summer. Unlike many other fungal diseases, powdery mildew doesn't even need soaking rain to spread. That's one reason it surprises so many gardeners. The spores travel easily on wind currents, clothing, insects, and even garden tools. One infected leaf can eventually lead to dozens more if conditions stay favorable. This is why healthy-looking squash patches can suddenly seem infected almost overnight. The real story, though, starts long before those white patches ever appear. Powdery mildew loves gardens that unintentionally create the perfect environment for it. When squash plants first start growing, everything looks tidy. There is plenty of space between leaves, sunlight reaches the soil, and fresh air moves freely through the plants. Then summer arrives. Squash vines stretch in every direction. Leaves become enormous. Zucchini plants form dense crowns. Pumpkin vines begin weaving over one another. Cucumbers climb fences until they create walls of green. What started as a well-spaced garden slowly turns into a thick jungle. From above, everything still looks lush and productive. Underneath is a completely different world. Air barely moves through the canopy. Moisture lingers much longer after morning dew. Lower leaves spend most of the day in shade. Older foliage begins aging naturally, creating weaker tissue that fungal spores can colonize more easily. Ironically, powdery mildew doesn't always prefer soaking wet leaves. It often thrives when humidity around the plant stays high while the leaf surface itself remains relatively dry. Dense foliage creates exactly those conditions. This explains why two squash plants growing only a few feet apart can have completely different outcomes. One receives full sun with excellent airflow. The other is crowded between tomatoes, beans, and tall corn where air barely circulates. Guess which one usually develops powdery mildew first? Sunlight matters too. Leaves that receive several hours of direct sun dry more quickly and generally stay healthier. Shaded leaves remain cooler and often become the first places where mildew establishes itself. Old infected leaves left lying around after harvest can also contribute. Many fungal spores survive from one season to the next on plant debris, ready to begin the cycle again when warm weather returns. Understanding these conditions changes the way experienced gardeners think about prevention. Instead of asking, "How do I kill powdery mildew?" they ask, "How do I make my garden a place where powdery mildew struggles to survive?" And this is where the milk trick stops sounding strange and starts making sense. The idea of spraying milk on plants has been circulating among gardeners for decades. At first glance, it sounds almost ridiculous. Milk belongs in cereal, coffee, or the refrigerator, not on squash leaves. Yet many home gardeners continue using diluted milk every growing season, especially once powdery mildew begins appearing. The important word here is diluted. No experienced gardener simply pours whole milk over the plant and hopes for the best. Instead, milk is mixed with water and sprayed lightly over the leaf surfaces. The reason isn't that milk completely eliminates powdery mildew. It doesn't. The goal is much more realistic. Many gardeners use milk sprays because research suggests they may help slow the spread of powdery mildew when infections are still small and caught early. That extra time can keep leaves productive longer while allowing the plant to continue making healthy fruit. The mistake is not spraying milk. The mistake is spraying it too late. If half the plant is already covered in thick white fungal growth, milk is unlikely to reverse that damage. Once leaves are are badly infected, the fungus has already disrupted much of their normal function. Those leaves rarely become healthy again. This is why gardeners who swear by milk often begin spraying when they notice only a few small patches rather than waiting until the entire plant looks sick. That early response can make all the difference. Naturally, this raises another question. Why would milk help at all? Scientists are still studying the exact mechanisms, but there are a few simple ideas that help explain why this unusual garden practice has attracted attention. Milk contains proteins, minerals, sugars, and naturally occurring compounds. When diluted milk is sprayed onto leaves and exposed to sunlight, some researchers believe certain components may create conditions that make it more difficult for powdery mildew fungi to continue spreading across the leaf surface. Other studies suggest milk may encourage naturally occurring microorganisms that compete with disease-causing fungi. The exact explanation is still being explored, and different studies have shown different levels of effectiveness depending on the crop, weather, concentration, and timing. What matters most for gardeners is understanding the bigger picture. Milk is not attacking the fungus like a powerful chemical fungicide. Instead, it may slightly shift the conditions on the leaf surface in favor of the plant, especially when used before infections become severe. Milk spray works in a somewhat similar preventive way. It may help tip the balance, but it works best alongside good gardening practices rather than replacing them. That brings us to one of the biggest questions gardeners ask. How much milk should you actually use? You'll find dozens of recipes online. Some recommend very weak mixtures. Others call for almost equal parts milk and water. The truth is that there isn't one universally perfect formula. Many gardeners start with a gentle mixture of 1 part milk to 9 parts water. This creates a light spray that's less likely to leave noticeable residue while still providing the compounds people are hoping to use. Others prefer a stronger mixture of 1 part milk to 2 parts water, especially if powdery mildew has just begun appearing. However, stronger isn't automatically better. Higher concentrations may increase the chance of unpleasant odors as the milk dries, particularly during hot weather. Some sensitive plants may also show leaf spotting or minor damage. That's why testing first is such a smart habit. Spray only a few leaves. Wait a day or two. If everything looks healthy, then continue with the rest of the plant. Whether you use skim milk, low-fat milk, or whole milk often matters less than using the spray consistently and appropriately. Consistency usually beats concentration. Now comes the part that many gardeners accidentally get wrong. How the spray is applied matters almost as much as what's inside the bottle. A quick mist over the top of the plant usually isn't enough. Powdery mildew can establish itself on both the upper and lower surfaces of leaves. That means thorough coverage gives the best chance of reaching areas where spores may already be developing. Morning is generally the best time to spray. Temperatures are cooler, leaves have time to dry gradually, and the plant isn't dealing with intense afternoon heat. Avoid spraying during the hottest part of the day when wet leaves combined with strong sun may increase stress on the plant. Most gardeners repeat applications every 7 to 10 days if weather conditions continue favoring powdery mildew or if new infections appear. Heavy rain may wash much of the spray away, making another application worthwhile afterward. Pay attention to the plants. If leaves begin showing unusual spotting, discoloration, or damage after spraying, stop using the mixture. Likewise, if the smell becomes unpleasant during very hot weather, reducing the concentration or switching to another management method may be the better choice. The goal is always supporting the plant rather than creating new problems. But even the best milk spray has limits. This is the part many videos leave out. Milk cannot restore leaves that have already been heavily damaged. It cannot undo weeks of fungal growth. And it certainly cannot replace basic garden maintenance. If infected leaves are packed inside a dense jungle with almost no airflow, spraying milk alone is like opening one small window in a house that's already full of smoke. The underlying problem remains. That's why experienced gardeners rarely rely on one single solution. Instead, they combine several small advantages that work together. They plant with generous spacing so vines have room to breathe. And if powdery mildew does appear, they respond early instead of hoping it disappears on its own. Every one of those decisions makes the next infection a little less likely. And this is why prevention matters more than any bottle. The real lesson behind the milk spray trick isn't that gardeners have discovered a miracle cure hiding in the refrigerator. It's that successful gardening usually comes from stacking simple habits together. And sometimes, yes, a carefully diluted milk spray that may help slow powdery mildew before it gets out of control. Each step alone is modest. Together, Together, they can keep squash, zucchini, pumpkins, and cucumbers productive for much longer through the growing season. And that's it. See you in the next one.